My brother was the one who always needed saving. Every few months, a new disaster. A car loan he couldn't make payments on, a landlord threatening eviction, a credit card maxed out on things I still don't fully understand. And every single time, my parents would gather whatever they had, whatever we had, and pour it into him. I was the one who didn't ask for much. I learned early that asking created tension, and tension in our house had a way of lasting for weeks. So I kept my head down, got straight A's, worked a part time job at a dry cleaner every weekend through high school, and told myself that if I could just get through the next few years, things would be different. When I was 17, my AP chemistry teacher stopped me after class and slid a printed list across her desk. It was a list of full ride scholarship programs, the kind that covered tuition, housing, a stipend for books. She told me I was exactly the kind of student these programs existed for. I'd never thought of myself that way. I'd always thought of myself as the kid who had to be careful, not too much. I applied to 11 programs. I got into 3. The one I accepted covered everything: 4 years at a state university, 4 hours from home, plus a $2,500 annual stipend. I remember sitting in the school parking lot reading the acceptance email on my phone, and my first feeling wasn't joy, it was relief. Pure, exhausted relief. Like something tight in my chest had finally loosened. I told my parents at dinner, my mom hugged me, my dad said he was proud. My brother, who was 23 at the time and living in the basement, said, "That's cool," and went back to scrolling his phone. I should have noticed, even then, that something was off. But I was 18 and I wanted to believe we were fine. I started school in September. I called home every Sunday. Things sounded okay for the first few months, manageable at least. My brother had gotten a job at an auto shop. My dad's back had been bothering him, but nothing serious. My mom sounded tired, but she always sounded tired. Then February happened. My brother got fired. I still don't know the full story. No one would give it to me straight. But from what I pieced together, there was a customer complaint, something about missing parts, and he was let go the same week. Within 3 weeks of losing that job, he had burnt through whatever savings he had, stopped making rent payments on his portion of the house bills, and started asking my parents for gas money. I found out because my mom called me on a Wednesday, which was unusual. She never called on Wednesdays. "We need to talk about something," she said. I thought someone was sick. I actually sat down on my dorm room floor because my legs felt strange. "Your father and I were thinking," she said, "that it might make more sense for you to come home. Transfer to the community college here. It's cheaper, and we could really use an extra hand." I didn't say anything for a long moment. "An extra hand with what?" I finally asked. She started talking about bills, about how my brother was struggling and they didn't want to push him out. He was family, she said, and family sticks together. About how my stipend money, small as it was, would help cover groceries. About how community college was still a degree and plenty of people got good jobs that way. She said it like it was a reasonable request, like she was asking me to help with dishes. I told her I needed a few days to think about it. I spent those days barely sleeping. I went to the financial aid office and asked what would happen to my scholarship if I transferred. The advisor looked at me with this careful expression and said, slowly, that full ride merit scholarships were tied to enrollment at that institution. If I left, I would lose it. There was no transferring it. There was no pausing it. It was gone the moment I walked out. I already knew that. I just needed to hear it out loud from someone else. I called my mom back on Saturday morning. I told her I wasn't coming home. I told her the scholarship didn't transfer. I told her that if I left, I would lose everything I'd worked for and I would be starting from scratch, probably with debt at 22 or 23, with no degree and no fallback. She said she understood. She didn't sound like she understood. Things shifted after that phone call. It wasn't dramatic. No one screamed at me or told me I was selfish. It was quieter than that, which was somehow worse. My Sunday calls got shorter. My dad stopped getting on the phone. When I asked how things were going, my mom would say fine in a way that clearly meant the opposite of fine and then change the subject. My brother started texting me occasionally, not to catch up, to ask questions. Could I send him some of my stipend? Just for this month? Just until he got back on his feet. Could I look into whether there were any jobs near my campus he could apply to remotely? Once, memorably, he asked if I could co-sign a personal loan for him because his credit score made him ineligible on his own. I said no to all of it. Each time I said no, I'd put my phone down and sit with this hollow feeling in my stomach that I didn't have a name for yet. I know now it was grief. I was grieving a version of my family I think I'd always wanted, but maybe never actually had. The summer after my freshman year, I went home for 6 weeks. I needed to. I'd sublet my dorm room and didn't have anywhere else to go. Those 6 weeks were the longest of my life. My brother was home all day, every day. He was applying to jobs, he said, but I never saw him do it. He slept until noon. He watched TV until 2 or 3 in the morning. My parents worked around him like he was furniture they didn't want to scratch. No one said anything. No one gave him a deadline or a consequence or even a serious conversation, but they had opinions about me. One night after dinner, my dad told me he thought I was becoming cold, that I used to care about people, and now all I cared about was getting ahead. I asked him what I was supposed to do differently. He said family supports each other. I said I agreed, which was why I was getting a degree so I could actually be a support, not just another person in the house not contributing. He didn't respond to that. He just shook his head and walked away. I cried in my childhood bedroom that night, quietly, with my face in a pillow. Not because he'd hurt my feelings, though he had, but because I realized that no matter what I said or how I said it, the conclusion was already decided. I was the one who had left, which meant I was the one who was wrong. I went back to school in August, and I didn't go home again for almost 2 years. Those 2 years were the hardest and the most clarifying of my life. I took on a part-time job at a campus cafe, not because I had to, my scholarship covered everything, but because I needed the structure. I needed to feel like I was building something, even on a small scale, even just a savings account with a few $100s in it that was mine and only mine. I made 2 real friends that year, a woman named Gwen, who was pre-law and had a dark sense of humor about everything, and a guy named Patrick who was studying social work and seemed genuinely interested in other people in a way that still amazes me. They knew roughly what was going on with my family. I didn't hide it, exactly. I just didn't lead with it. And they never made me feel like I owed anyone an explanation for the choices I was making. That was new for me. Being around people who didn't make me feel like I owed anyone anything. I graduated in 4 years, on time, with a degree in accounting and a job offer already signed before I walked across the stage. A regional firm in a city about 2 hours from where I grew up. Starting salary just under $55,000 with benefits and a 401k match. Not glamorous, but mine. My mom came to graduation. My dad did not. He said his back was bad, but I suspected it was more complicated than that. My brother didn't come. He sent a text that said congrats with a balloon emoji. My mom and I had lunch after the ceremony. Just the two of us. She seemed genuinely proud in a way that made me sad for both of us. Because I kept thinking, you almost talked me out of this. You almost convinced me to come home and give all of this up for someone who sent me a balloon emoji. I didn't say that. I ate my salad and smiled and let her take a photo of me in my cap and gown. I settled into my new city. I got an apartment, a real one, a 1-bedroom with a small balcony and a dishwasher. I bought my own groceries. I set up automatic transfers into a savings account. I went to work. I came home. I cooked dinner. I called Gwen on Fridays. I built something that felt like an actual life. I kept in loose contact with my parents, maybe once or twice a month, short calls, surface level. My brother and I barely spoke at all. I knew, through my mom, that he'd had a few jobs since I left. A warehouse position, a stint at a big box store, something with a delivery service, and that none of them had lasted more than a few months. I'm not going to pretend I felt nothing when she told me these things. I felt a complicated mix of things. Some sadness, some frustration, and underneath all of it, something I'm not proud of but have stopped fighting. Relief that I wasn't there. Relief that it wasn't my problem to fix. 2 years into my job, I got promoted to senior associate. I started putting extra money toward a small emergency fund. I took a long weekend trip to the Pacific Northwest with Gwen and Patrick. I signed up for a half marathon, mostly to see if I could finish it. I was starting to feel like myself, like a version of myself I hadn't known existed before. Then my mom called. It was a Thursday evening in October. I was eating leftover pasta when my phone lit up with her name. Something about the time made me nervous. She almost never called on weeknights. "I need to tell you something," she said. "And I don't want you to panic." She had been diagnosed with early stage cervical cancer. The doctors had found it at a routine screening. Early stage, she emphasized. Very treatable. She'd already had her first consultation. I put my fork down. We talked for almost an hour. I asked every question I could think of. Her oncologist name, the treatment plan, whether she was getting a second opinion, what my dad knew, what she needed. She answered carefully, the way she does when she's trying to hold things together. Before we hung up, she said, "There's one more thing." I waited. "The treatment is covered by insurance," she said, "but there are some out-of-pocket costs that are going to add up. Your father and I were wondering if you might be able to help." I asked what she meant. She mentioned a figure. It wasn't enormous, a few $1,000s spread over several months, but it was real. "We wouldn't ask," she said, "but your brother is in a tight spot right now, and we don't want to touch the retirement account if we don't have to." I sat with that for a moment. Your brother is in a tight spot. It was almost impressive, really, the way that sentence fit into every version of this conversation I had ever had with my family. My brother, in a tight spot. My brother, needing a cushion. My brother, the reason we can't quite get there on our own. "Mom," I said slowly, "I want to be here for you through this. I really do." "I know you do, sweetheart, but I need to ask you something." She was quiet. "When I was 18, I said, and you called me to come home, do you remember what you said? You said we needed an extra hand. You said it would be better for everyone if I transferred back." "I remember," she said. "If I had done that," I said, "if I had actually come home, I would not have this job. I would not have this apartment. I would not have any savings at all. I would be starting from zero right now at 28 years old, with no degree and no career and nothing." She didn't say anything. "So before I answer your question," I said, "I need you to think about that. Because the only reason I am in any position to help you at all is because I said no." The silence on the line was long. Not hostile, exactly. Just heavy. "I'm not saying no," I told her. "I'm just saying I need you to understand what it cost me to be in this position. And what it would have cost all of us if I hadn't held the line." My mom was quiet for a long moment. Then she said quietly, "I understand." I don't know if she fully did. I don't know if any of us ever fully do when it comes to our own families. I told her I would send her something each month for the next few months to help with the costs. I also told her that I loved her and I meant it. Both things were true at the same time. After I hung up, I sat on my balcony for a long time in the cold air, watching the city lights. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad, exactly. I was something more like settled. Like a compass that had finally stopped spinning and found true north. I had not abandoned my family. I had not become cold, the way my dad once said. I had just refused. A long time ago, in a dorm room, talking to a financial aid advisor with my heart hammering, to let someone else's chaos become the ceiling on my life. And because of that, I was here. In my apartment, with my savings account and my career and my half marathon medal hanging on the wall, able to help, able to show up. I just wish someone, back then, had told me that holding on to your own path wasn't the same as letting go of the people you love. I had to figure that one out alone. I've thought a lot about what would have happened if I had said yes. Not in a dramatic way, not some big spiral of what ifs. Just quietly, the way you turn a small stone over in your hand and look at what's underneath. If I had packed up my dorm room that February and come home, I know exactly where I would be right now. I'd be living 20 minutes from the house I grew up in, probably working a job I fell into rather than one I built toward, probably still waiting for my brother to get it together, probably still being told that patience is the same thing as love. What nobody tells you when you're 18 and someone hands you a way out, a real one, with your name on it, is that the people who love you can also be the ones who ask you to put it down. Not out of cruelty. That's the part that took me the longest to understand. My mom wasn't trying to ruin my life. She genuinely believed that what she was asking was reasonable, that family absorbing family's problems was just what people did. She'd spent 20 years living that way. It was the only match she knew. But there's a kind of love that doesn't account for what it costs the other person. And I think that's what I had to learn to name slowly over years. That being asked to sacrifice your future for someone else's comfort is not the same as being loved. It can look like love from the outside. It can even feel like love in the moment. But when you sit with it honestly, it's something closer to convenience wearing love's clothes. What I built, the degree, the job, the savings account that let me actually help my mom when she got sick, none of it came from luck. It came from a decision I made alone in a dorm room, shaking a little, telling a financial aid advisor things I hadn't even told my closest friends. It came from saying no when no was the hardest word I had ever said in my life. It came from sitting with my dad's disappointment and my mom's silences and my brother's sporadic texts asking for money and choosing, over and over again, to stay on the path I had fought to get onto. That's what Gwen and Patrick saw in me that I couldn't see in myself at the time. Not coldness, not selfishness, but discipline. A quiet, unglamorous, sometimes lonely kind of discipline. The kind that doesn't look like much until years later when it turns out to be the entire foundation you're standing on. I think about the version of me who came home. She wouldn't have been a bad person. She would have been exhausted and resentful in ways she probably wouldn't have been able to name, and she would have given and given until there was nothing left to give, and then she would have had nothing to offer my mom when it actually mattered. No savings, no stability, no position from which to help at all. The choices we make when everything feels impossible are the ones that define what we're actually made of, not the easy ones, not the ones where the right answer is obvious and comfortable and everybody claps. The ones where you're sitting on a dorm room floor at 18, heart pounding, and you have to decide who you're going to be, not just today but for the next decade. I'm glad I made the call I made, and I'm glad for the first time in a long time that I can say that without apology.